Mary first smelled the burning before she saw the glow. It was twilight, and the last tangerine light of the evening slid across the thatch roofs of Rookhaven like a fading blessing. Yet, over the river, on the hill where the Citadel Library stood, an unnatural radiance pulsed orange and hungry. She ran, skirts snapping against her shins, ink-stained fingers pressed to a stitchwork satchel whose contents mattered less and less with every heartbeat. By the time she reached the outer cloister, the front doors had collapsed inward. The oak lintels, so old they had names curled in their own resin like dying snakes. Shelves toppled and hurled centuries of wisdom into the fire's open mouth. The great rose window burst, scattering mosaics that sizzled when they met the flames. Mary's breath hitched. Inside those walls she had learnt her letters and whispered her first vow. I will remember what others forget. Now remembering had become impossible. Remembrance was turning to smoke. "Mary!" a voice called. Master Caladan, her teacher in paleography, stumbled from the entry, his robe already in cinders. He pressed a parcel, 3 codies bound in rawhide, into her arms. "Take them to the river. Keep them dry." A hoarse laugh. "Dry, can you imagine? Then come find me." She never did. A falling beam separated them. The library was devouring its own guardians. That night, she sat by the river, staring at the packages. Above, sparks rose like insects of fire and bobbed among the stars until ash began to snow. A single sheet, edges blackened but script still legible, drifted onto her lap. She recognized its minuscule hand, Caladan's catalogue of unnamed authors, those whose voices existed only in rumor. The page ended with a broken note. Some books leave shadows where they once lay. For a long while she cried, then gulped down the tears, for salt could stain vellum, and started copying. She had 1 quill, a pocket knife for sharpening, and a small vial of ink. She wrote until dawn drained color from the sky and exhaustion pinned her eyelids. When her head drooped, the embers across the water glowed like a fresh wound reopening. That was the first night she heard wings. They rustled at the horizon of hearing, softer than moths, yet imbued with a papery rasp. She looked up so fast her neck popped, but saw only drifting ash. She told herself it was wind. A week later, she learned otherwise. The city mourned, while officials blamed faulty lanterns, bandits, dissenters, anyone but themselves. Mary sat vigil beside the charred shell. She sifted through collapsed aisles, coaxing half-melted clasps to open, rescuing fragments of commentary charred around the margins like frost edge on a leaf. Each evening she ferried her new salvage back to the attic room she had inherited from no one, since so many someones were gone. On the 7th night she fell asleep, amid scraps, quill still in hand. A faint hush woke her. A candle guttered, sending ripples across light and shadow, and there, beside the windowsill, stood a bird. Not merely stood, it unfolded. Its feathers looked like narrow scrolls, each inscribed with glyphs that glimmered faintly. Its beak resembled a nib of bronze. When it blinked, thin membranes crinkled like turning pages. The creature radiated the smell of singed cedar and the pleasant dryness of new parchment. Mary did what any trained librarian would do after the world overturned twice in a week. She bowed. Words from a forgotten ritual surfaced. All knowledge honored, all memory preserved. The bird inclined its head and spoke, not aloud, but inside the soft recess between thought and breath. "Who keeps the watch over embers?" it asked. "I try," Mary answered. "I want what was lost to be found again." The avian eyes burned ink brack. "Then you shall carry my feather. Where ash lies heavy, there I rise." With that, it fanned its wings. From a mid-air twist, one primary quill loosened, spiraled and landed on the table, white as unmarked linen. Before Mary could reach for it, the feather darkened as though absorbing unseen smoke, until it turned silvery grey. Letters seeped across its barbs. Caladan's hand, unmistakably transcribing the missing half of a catalogue entry she had found only in fragments. She gasped. The Parchment Phoenix she had read a legend once, buried in a footnote, a being that emerged from burnt libraries to rewrite lost knowledge in ash ink. When she looked up, the bird was gone, but a single curl of soot drifted in its wake, spelling a sigil for return to. Mary woke at sunrise with the feather still on the table. The newly written text was perfect. Punctuation, rubrication, even marginalia. She turned it over. The verso side contained a poem in a language she didn't recognize. Not ash, but possibility, she thought. She hurried back to the ruins, carrying the feather inside her satchel. A milky haze hovered over scorched timbers. Where she crouched to gather ash, the feather warmed. She shook a handful onto the barren page of her notebook. The grains quivered, arranged themselves into deliberate lines, and melted into ink. Words blossomed, an entire treatise on herbal anesthesia, known only by rumour. She nearly squealed. Within the hour, townsfolk gathered, whispering. Some crossed themselves, others smiled. Knowledge, once vaporized, was returning. But if a phoenix delicately rewriting pages could soothe grief, it also stoked new fears. Who controls a miracle? Merchants of secrets leaned in. Magistrates filed reports. That night, the phoenix returned. It perched on a fallen Corinthian capital near the library shell, preening luminous quills. Mary approached with a knotted stomach. "They want to see you," she said. "They'll try to lock you in a cage." The phoenix ruffled its pages. "Stories don't fit in cages," it replied. "But storytellers often forget." She hesitated. "Help us. Why me?" "Because you watched the fire without turning away. Because you wrote when others wailed. Because you still ask questions even as your world burns." Mary realized she had not merely been chosen as a scribe. She was becoming a steward of a creature older than kingdoms. She asked the phoenix to wait while she retrieved blank folios, charcoal, and an old printing frame. If the bird could inscribe ash onto paper, perhaps they could accelerate the restoration. For many nights they worked together. Mary would comb through debris, name aloud a lost title, a pharmacopoeia, a map of forgotten archipelagos, the diaries of dissenting astronomers. The phoenix would dip its beak in the ash Mary gathered. Lines surfaced across pages like dawning constellations. Sometimes the bird grew enormous, a lofting canopy of papyrus wings. Sometimes it shrank to the size of a swift, slipping through cracks to find unburned scraps for reference. It seemed to obey a logic beyond physics, as if it existed inside the idea of libraries rather than the brick and mortar. Word spread along river routes. Scholars arrived with charred bundles. Whole caravans came in pilgrimage carrying soot-laden scroll tubes as offerings. Mary and her avian partner reproduced hymns thought dead, technical blueprints, bawdy plays. The attic filled, then overflowed. The city council offered a civic hall, half destroyed. Volunteers rebuilt it into a temporary archive. For a while, hope felt airy and bright as birdsong. Then came the purifiers. They rode under a banner of 3 black tears. Their dogma proclaimed that knowledge should rise spontaneously from living minds, not linger in objects that outlasted their authors. Books, to them, were fossils. And fossils belonged to the grave. When they heard of a bird that regurgitated centuries on command, they marched. The council debated defence. Some argued to hide the phoenix. Others believed unveiling it as a public marvel would sway even zealots. Mary asked the phoenix itself. "Ash or audience, danger in both," the phoenix whispered. "Yet fire remembers. Let memory choose." Mary pondered that answer while anxiety crawled across the city's wooden bone. She convened with her fellow scribes, dozens now, from apprentices to venerable calligraphers, and formed a plan. They divided the restored works among safe houses, copying key texts onto linen, clay tablets, even carved beams. Knowledge became a migratory flock. If one wing was pierced, another could still lift. 3 days later, the purifiers breached the gates. 3. The first clash happened at dawn, by the public well. Priests smashed a crate of printed herbal manuals. Citizens countered with stones. Soldiers intervened too late. Flames burst along thatch roofs. Miri stood on the civic hall's balcony and felt the air tighten, like parchment on a drawing frame. The phoenix landed beside her. Ink trickled from its talons, forming ciphers that evaporated before she could read them. She touched the bird's shoulder. "Will you fight?" "I will write. Battles vanish, words linger." Below, chaos rippled. Purifiers set torches to a stack of newly restored codices. Smoke curled. As pages blackened, the phoenix launched, wingspan eclipsing the rising sun. It dove through the plume and something extraordinary occurred. The fire blew inward, sucked into the bird's breast like a breath. Ash spiraled around its body, following invisible currents, and clung to each feather. The phoenix became a silhouette of swirling soot, terrifying and magnificent. Where it flew, smoke knit itself into letters that arched mid-air before drifting like black snow. Children caught the flakes and screamed with wonder. Each fleck unfolded into a tiny chapbook, filled with the texts consumed moments earlier. Fire destroyed. The phoenix transcribed. The spectacle paralyzed both sides until a purifier captain aimed a crossbow. Miri, on the balcony, saw the bolt's tip silhouette against the light. She shouted, but the twang drowned her voice. The bolt streaked, striking the phoenix's wing. A puff of grey burst, and the bird faltered. Miri's heart seized. If the phoenix fell, knowledge might fall with it. She sprinted through corridors, out the grand doors, into the melee. Ash stung her eyes. She pushed past grappling bodies. The phoenix lay in the square, wing torn. Burnt letters leaked like blood, strings of half-words smeared on cobbles. She knelt. "I'm here," she whispered. "What do you need?" The bird turned its bronze-nibbed beak toward her, and an idea unfolded within her mind, the way a word forms on the tongue before sound. The phoenix needed fuel, not just any ash, but the ash of libraries, concentrated memory. Miri assessed what remained. The civic hall still burned on one side. She ran inside, hacking smoke, gathered handful after handful of smouldering folios, sacrificing them, yes, but trusting in copies secreted around town. She dumped the powder over the injured wing. The phoenix absorbed the grey pulp. Feathers knitted, letters aligned. It rose incandescent again. Then it sang. The note was neither avian nor human, but something between cello and thunder. Vibrations rippled across the plaza. Torches extinguished, blades rattled loose. People fell to their knees. For a heartbeat, the city's centuries spun overhead, visual, audible. Entire histories projected as silhouettes on the smoke. Engineers designing aqueducts, rebel poets reciting against tyrants, midwives chanting against tyrants. The purifiers watched their lineage unveiled, and for some, self-righteous certainty fractured. When the note faded, the square was silent except for crackling embers. The purifiers retreated, some ashamed, some merely afraid. Citizens formed a living corridor, letting them go. No one pursued. Violence dimmed, replaced by awe too large for revenge. 4. In the aftermath, Rookhaven rebuilt not just its library, but its philosophy. Scribes, potters, singers, all became librarians of their crafts, encoding knowledge in as many mediums as existed. Walls displayed bas-reliefs of mathematical proofs. Orchards housed wind chimes tuned to epic poems. Bakers stamped bread with civic records, edible and fragrant. The phoenix roosted high in the new archive atrium, which was open air supported by pillars carved to resemble stacked books. Miri became Keeper of Embers, the first of that title. Her feather quill hung in a glass case, but she rarely needed it. The bird visited nightly, and together they curated memories rebuilt. One evening, years later, Miri found a boy loitering under the atrium, weeping over a ruined slate. His geometry assignment had washed away in rain. He would fail, he said, and his father would send him to the tanner's yard. Miri sat with him and tore a strip of blank parchment. "Draw what you remember," she urged. He sniffled, scratched a hesitant angle, a crooked arc. The phoenix landed beside them. Grey motes spiraled from its wings, settling onto the parchment. Shapes corrected themselves, theorem blossoming true. The boy gasped. Miri winked. "Knowledge isn't about never losing," she said. "It's about finding again." The boy looked at the phoenix. "What happens if all the books burn again?" Miri opened her palm. Ash residue shimmered there like fine sand. "Then we gather the ash, write anew. Every ending leaves ink for a beginning." 5 older age surprised her the way twilight steals color. Gradually, then suddenly. Her hair silvered. Her hands trembled. Yet each dusk, when she climbed the spiral stair to the highest gallery, strength returned. The phoenix perched atop a girder of brass, turning head over back, waiting. One night the bird seemed restless. It rustled out a feather larger than before, set it at her feet, and spoke. "I have written much here. Other fires call." She understood. Across oceans, other libraries smouldered, other memories risked erasure. "I can't follow," she whispered, voice rasping like pages turning too fast. "But someone will." The phoenix's eyes gleamed kindness. "Choose." Miri thought of the boy, now a craftsman in his own right, of young scribes laughing with ink-blackened teeth, of refugees who arrived carrying only songs. She penned invitations on slivers of parchment and set them fluttering from the tower. By dawn, aspirants waited below. At sunrise, the phoenix flew low, showering ash. Each fleck settled onto a spectator's sleeve or eyelid. Where it touched, unreadable runes glimmered. Gifts, seeds of resilience. Miri selected a dozen apprentices. She placed her original quill, Kaladin's last gift, into a wooden box with the phoenix feather. "Follow the bird," she instructed. "Learn to listen to cinders. When you return, you won't just rebuild. You'll teach the world not to burn itself again." They set off that evening, phoenix arcing overhead. Miri watched until the horizon swallowed their silhouettes. 6, her final season passed peacefully. Rookhaven prospered. The purifiers dissolved, their remnants absorbed into guilds where curiosity tempered zeal. Children recited the Phoenix Pledge at festivals. "We rise, we write, we remember." One spring morning, Miri felt brittle. She walked alone to the old library hill, where blackened stones still dotted the grass. She sat amid violets and closed her eyes. A hush of wings stirred the air. The phoenix returned, smaller now, glowing like an ember in late dusk. It settled on her shoulder, warm as a hearth. In her mind, she heard a final line. "When parchment turns to dust, wisdom finds new pages." She smiled, exhaled, and became lightness. Later that day, townsfolk found her empty cloak, and beside it, a new sapling growing from burnt earth, its leaves veined with gold like illuminated letters. They named it Libris Arbor and vowed to protect it. Years blurred into decades. Whenever a distant blaze consumed a cache of knowledge, witnesses would speak of a rustle like pages turning just before a pale bird emerged, trailing soot that blossomed into books. Those who carried feathers returned eventually, telling stories of cultures reignited, alphabets revived, tongues once banned now sung from rooftops. In a marble alcove of Rookhaven's archive hangs a modest portrait. Miri, quill poised, phoenix aloft. Below are etched her words. "Fire may hollow the house of memory, but ash is not the end of the story. From it we craft ink, and with ink we write tomorrow." Visitors trace the inscription, fingers dusting invisible soot, and leave with pockets full of possibility. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the parchment phoenix circles another city's smoke, ready to turn loss into lines, grief into grammar, ashes into the alphabet of hope.